relationship with Bill. I really, really liked him a lot.
Hunter used to be America's favorite guy. A beautiful body with blonde hair and blue eyes and a smile that could melt anyone's heart on screen. Everyone thought he had everything. Love, money, and fame, things most people could only dream of. But when he was 86 years old, he shocked everyone by telling them a dark secret he had kept for almost his whole life, one that would make old Hollywood feel bad. It was a truth that was tied to his secret identity, unfinished love affairs, cruel betrayals, and a planned media plot that almost ended his career. Behind the shiny walls of Hollywood's golden age, what really happened? And why did a man who was once a national treasure have to live in fear for so long? We need to start at the beginning of the tragedy to get the whole story. At the Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital in Manhattan in July 1931, a child was born without a sound. His dad only saw him once and he was there for 3 minutes at most. He left a single Hershey's bar on the hospital bed and then turned away without saying anything or even giving it one last look. The doctor could only write 2 words on the birth certificate, boy. The kid's real name was Arthur Kelm, but everyone would call him Tab Hunter from now on. At that point he was just a boy growing up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, with his mother and older brother without a father. His German immigrant mother, Gertrude Jelen, was strict and cold. She never hugged her kids or said, "I love you." Arthur's days were filled with small meals and the steady sound of a sewing machine late into the night. His dreams were often broken by silent cries coming from under the blanket. Arthur knew he was different from a very young age, not because he was shy or didn't like baseball like other boys, but because seeing a friend change shirts in the locker room made him feel something strange. At first he thought it was just respect, but when he was 12 he kissed his best friend in secret at a church camp in Albany, and knew it was more than that. Before I could forget the moment, something bad happened. The kiss was seen by another child, who told the camp nuns about it. Arthur was dragged into the courtyard and made to kneel in front of the whole camp while the head nun screamed at him, calling him a pervert and saying that what he did was Satan's sin. That very night he was kicked out of school and sent home without a ride or anyone to go with him. He walked in the rain for more than 4 hours, getting soaked to the bone and losing his energy. His mother didn't support him when he finally got home. Instead, Gertrude said, "Why did you bring such shame to me?" Those words left a scar that never healed. Following that event, Arthur always felt scared, fear of being caught and fear of being left alone again. He went to St. Francis Church near Nordstrom Street to admit his sins in the hopes of being forgiven. The priest slammed the confessional door and yelled, "Get out of God's house, you filthy creature." This made his teenage years like living 2 lives. When girls tried to touch him at school, he laughed when he had to, acting like everyone else. He secretly wrote down his bad dreams in a small notebook that he hid under his bed at night. He thought about ending everything sometimes. In 1947, he stood on Manhattan Bridge and looked down at the freezing water. He put 1 foot on the edge of the bridge, but the sound of a police car's horn cutting through the night pushed him back from the edge. Arthur knew that things could not keep going this way. He also knew that he would lose everything if anyone found out the truth. He was right, too. A few years later, when he finally went to Hollywood, the bright place he had always dreamed of, he found that it would push him even further into the dark. In 1949, when Arthur Kilm was only 18, he met a guy who would change his life. Arthur Kilm was a shy boy who had been kicked out of church and lived in fear as a child. There was a man named Dick Clayton. They met by chance in Griffith Park at a horse barn. After giving Arthur a long look, Dick said one thing that would change the rest of his life: "You look like America." Soon after, Arthur was asked to attend a secret party in the Hollywood Hills. Henry Wilson, who was one of the most powerful guys in show business at the time, was one of the guests. Henry did a lot more than just run the business. He changed kings. The person who helped hot guys like Rock Hudson, Troy Donahue, and Guy Madison get ahead in their jobs. He was very clear about what he wanted. A boy who was pretty good and hiding something. After only one night, Arthur's personality had changed. Henry changed his name and took away his old one. Tab Hunter. Tab is like an unpaid bill and Hunter is like someone who won't give up. It sounded exciting, but no one had ever asked Tab what he thought. He became a manufactured object overnight and went to Hollywood. A sign that wasn't clear about how much it cost. In just 2 years, Tab's body and face were on the covers of Photoplay, Modern Screen, and Life. Photographs of Henry half-naked by the pool, scripted interviews with famous actors, and rumors of secret dates with Natalie Wood were all carefully staged by Henry, who ran the whole thing like a play. A play in which Tab had to say every line out loud. But there was a cost to each spotlight. Henry was in charge of almost every part of Tab's life, from his social schedule and job interviews to the way he got out of the car. Not letting me have a job right away. Even worse, Henry started to break personal rules while saying he was protecting her. Later, Tab would talk about how Henry would call him in the middle of the night and ask who he was sleeping with. At times, Henry would show up at the flat Tabs and his brother shared without being asked. He would bring alcohol and a sense of ownership. A friend of Tab's saw Henry looking through his drawers for private letters and then threatening to show them to everyone if Tab didn't give in. This is when Tab's love life started to fall apart. For the sake of the press, he had to hang out with his female co-stars, and he had to avoid real relationships too. One was with David, a guy Tab had met on a horseback ride in Nanaimo. Henry made clear threats against David, and a few weeks later he disappeared without saying a word. A long time after the fact, Tab found out that David had left the trouble and moved all the way to Denver. When Tab wrote his autobiography at age 86, he talked about his life and admitted that he had been praised as the perfect man but never allowed to be one. He himself said that he was just a dummy made out of fear and control. It wasn't just ability that Hollywood lost. It made me feel trapped. Any love he had could only last when the doors were locked. In the dark, love was only possible because one bad camera flash could ruin everything. While Hollywood worked hard to make Tab Hunter a national symbol of manhood, his heart was struggling in quiet at the bottom of a dark pit. While he was being filmed, he smiled with Natalie Wood and laughed with Debbie Reynolds. Gossip columns constantly tied him to beautiful women. But when the lights went out, Tab went back to his small flat in Fairfax by himself. He stared at a half-burned cigarette and thought quietly about the man he loved. Anthony Perkins, a rising Broadway star who would later become famous for his role in Psycho in 1960, was one of his closest friends. In West Hollywood, they lived just one block apart. They often ran into each other at movie openings, but they always went home by different routes. They were like two shadows, close, but you could never see them together in the light of day. Over time, the relationship started to fall apart, not because they didn't love each other anymore, but because they were afraid of being found out. Late in 1956, a photographer from Confidential magazine took a picture of Anthony and Tab as they were leaving Beverly's El Coyote Mexican restaurant. The picture only showed a friendly pat on the shoulder, but that was enough to make me want to write a story. A story called Hollywood's Golden Boy Seen Whispering in the Dark appeared in Confidential in January 1957. People all over the country were shocked by the poor black and white picture. Even though there were no names on it, everyone knew it led to Tab Hunter. The fans felt uncomfortable. Theaters in Texas and Louisiana took down his posters because they didn't want to support someone who might hurt family values. With the slogan, "We deserve moral stars," a letter-writing effort got over 18,000 signatures telling Warner Brothers to listen. Tell him to go away if the rumors are true. While Henry Wilson was still Tab's boss, he called an emergency meeting that went on for 2 days. He finally said in public that Tab was seeing a female magazine editor named Alice and that they were dating seriously. Henry defended Tab in public, but he was also planning something else behind the scenes. He gave Confidential's editor $15,000 in secret, which persuaded them to rewrite their next article. What could have been a story about a gay love scandal turned into one about a male actress making a scene at a party. At the same time, Tab was scheduled to perform Young Love from Tinder Ballad on The Ed Sullivan Show. This was done on purpose to calm people down and strengthen his image as a romantic leading man for women. A huge number of people watched the show, but for Tab it was also the night his heart broke. He was singing into the camera when a helper gave him a rap note from Anthony Perkins. They broke up because of the 7 words inside. "I can no longer do this. They are going to kill both of us." It wasn't over after that. There were more and more rumors. The tabloids said he was booking hotel rooms at the Roosevelt for all-male parties, that he was seeing his personal trainer, and that he was seen in Palm Springs with an Italian designer. Though none of these stories were proven, people heard them so many times that they became true in their minds. Tab spent a lot of money to keep his private life out of the tabloids. He covered up the theft of love letters, paid off hotel staff who said they would leak information, and even helped friends who were fired for being gay stop selling stories. He looked at his account one time and saw that he only had $900 left. A lot of other things have been taken away to silence people he used to trust. No matter how long or short a relationship lasted, it ended in secret. It wasn't that he didn't have love, it was that he was never allowed to show it. He couldn't love openly or honestly or hold a man's hand during the day. He summed it up in one sad line when he thought about it now. I had love stories that were so beautiful they could have been made into films, but where I lived in Hollywood, they weren't allowed on TV or films. Just when things looked like they were getting better, Tab agreed to go to a small get-together in Walnut Park. He was only looking forward to a chill night with a few friends. He had no idea that the cops had been keeping an eye on the house for 2 weeks. When they broke in with a warrant that fall night in 1952, shouts echoed through the rooms, flashlights scanned the crowd, and Tab Hunter was dragged from the kitchen in the chaos. Things were going well at the start of the evening, a private party with about 17 people, including stars like Rory Calhoun, Broadway dancers, jazz musicians from Los Angeles, and people from the city's underground scene. A friend named Terry told Tab to come here to get away from Hollywood's strict beauty standards for a while, but it turned out to be a trick. Michael, who used to work at the Chateau Marmont, was one of the guests. He spent the night quietly taking pictures of private moments. That picture was sent right to Ben Fowler, a reporter for Confidential who loves gossip. Another cool young man at the party who was known for acting recklessly and using drugs behind people's backs was also thought to have leaked private tapes. However, Tab had nothing to do with the things that were said to have happened at the party that night. Just being there was enough to make the news, though. Police had been watching the house in secret for 2 weeks. At exactly 11:45 p.m., LAPD officers in plain clothes smashed in, yelled, and read a search order. A secret camera caught the moment Tab was dragged out of the small kitchen and pressed against the broken tile floor next to empty beer cans. A police officer's voice rang out, "Hunter, you're under arrest." That chaotic scene broke the carefully built picture Tab and his team had worked on for years. Soon after, an internal document was leaked that showed Henry Wilson, who used to be Tab's boss, had been secretly working with Confidential to hide a scandal involving Rock Hudson. In return, Henry told Ben Fowler to go after Tab to keep his golden goose safe. The news about this deception was shocking. Tab's face was featured heavily on the cover of Limpist, along with Rose Delgado's claim that she saw him hug an Italian dancer. Hollywood was shaky. Radio station KNX and TV station KTLA both talked about the Walnut Park incident a lot. By the middle of November, there was a pushback. Over 10,000 letters were sent to the Los Angeles Examiner asking Warner Brothers to end Tab's deal. A director who used to be looked up to bluntly said at the Hollywood Golden Boot Awards, "We care more about the image than the name." TV Guide used a public poll to name Tab as one of the 10 stars people hate the most this month. Ronnie Robertson, a former lover, asked for $10,000 in hush money, and said he would sell a bunch of love letters from September 1952 to Reuters, or keep them hidden if he wasn't paid within 3 days. The letters were full of coded notes, secret meeting spots and plans in Anino. Tab had no choice but to give in, spending almost all of his funds on advertising himself. Warner Brothers still tried to save what little goodwill he still had with the public. To handle the situation, Jack Warner hired lawyer Greg Bozer. The charges were dropped from immoral behavior to disturbing the peace. The person only had to pay a $50 fine and has no criminal record. They were also warned that they could sue private for invasion of privacy. At the same time, the studio started an emergency public relations effort. On November 27, 1952, they held a charity dinner where Tab and actress Susan Harrison both spoke. Photos were in Life and Photo Play, and Fan Mail magazine got letters from Tab comforting fans. But his image in Hollywood was ruined, even though his body wasn't hurt. Contracts and job offers for casting disappeared. After becoming a big star in 1952, Tab turned into his own problem. A director in San Diego told him straight out, "You're too much of a risk, we can't put our trust in the wrong place again." When he left Warner Brothers, all he had with him was an envelope with his firing letter and a $10,000 check. No one said goodbye to him. No one looked at him. A few cameras hid behind a truck to catch the moment America's golden boy fell. There was harsh winter sunlight on the studio steps. From Paramount to 20th Century Fox, no big studio was brave enough to give him a long-term deal. People used to wait in long lines for roles that were now filled by just a few people in B-movies or small theater shows in Santa Monica and Bakersfield. He was always in the news. A lot of problems in Confidential were aimed at Tab. Screen Scandals put out a fake picture of him that made it look like he was going into a gay bar in San Francisco. A shed near a friend's house, to be exact. The Midnight Weekly screamed Tab Hunter blue eyes dark secrets, turning him into a ghost of the stage. Tab even wrote to Fan Magazine Weekly and asked them to take back a story that said he lived with 3 male dancers in Laurel Canyon, but they refused, saying that they had close sources who told them not to. People wanted more blood the more he fought back. Tab went through some quiet years where he worked as a late-night news host in Palm Springs, had small parts in Bye Bye Birdie in Fresno, and did voice-over work for truck ads from time to time. He had to lift his head and smile barely every time he went outside to hide his eyes, which had become dark. Tab wrote in his autobiography, "I survived by shrinking until no one remembered to hate me anymore. But Hollywood could not forget. And surprise offer from an independent director opened a door that seemed to be locked for good." Tab came back to films, but not as the familiar boy next door. Instead, he played the rebellious and strange lead in the dark comedy Polyester, which starred the legendary drag queen Divine and was directed by John Waters. In the world of independent films, The Strange Match became a hit and was called Rebirth from the Ashes. When Tab finally faced the part of his life he had been hiding, though, he felt truly born again. Tab Hunter Confidential, his autobiography, came out in 2005 when he was 74 years old. He told the public for the first time that he was gay, and talked about how he had to live a lie for years in Hollywood, where power, sex, and fear were all linked like a maze. He talked about how his boss had betrayed him, how the press was always after him, and how he would spend lonely nights writing love letters that he would then burn out of fear of being found out. "I loved, but I had to love alone. I cried, but I had to cry for someone else." The same-name documentary had its launch at the South by Southwest Film Festival in 2015 and then at PACA. This was the first time that Hollywood really paid attention to how badly he was treated as a child. Tab lived happily with his partner Alan Glazer in Santa Barbara for the last 35 years of his life. They took care of flowers and horses and no longer hid anything. He smiled when asked why he decided to tell everyone. "I was sick of living my life through someone else's words. I chose to tell my own story, and I want to thank Alan Glazer for being there for me when I had nothing." Tab Hunter had a rapid heart attack at home on July 8, 2018, 3 days before his 87th birthday. Death was an accident. The world was different when he closed his eyes for the last time. Things that scared him, pushed him into the shadows, and almost took everything away from him were now talked about freely and with pride. It's the sad truth behind Tab Hunter's smile. People used to love this matinee idol, but he had to suffer, stay silent, and then speak out. He did this not to get back to fame, but so that others would never have to live in the dark like he did.